So in this video, I'm going to show you two things using the launcher and two new features that I added based on consumer input, people that have been using it. One, read that file. You'll always have the context. You'll always have the historical knowledge that keeps you on track, and you won't get the hallucinations. You won't get the weird code. You'll get structured, disciplined code. It's not... every AI coding project dies the same way. The model loses context. You keep re-explaining, and in a week, you're starting over. That's not a model problem. That's a handoff problem. And so the architect builder method that I created fixes this by making the handoff a folder. It's not a lengthy conversation. The architect, which is Claude or ChatGPT or some large language model, a normal chat, that's the architect. The builder is Codex or Claude Code or Cursor or whatever coding edge you want to use. They execute from files. And so the project launcher that I created that you hear me talking about all the time, it takes that friction out of starting it the right way. That's the hardest part. It saves you the setup work, copying all the folders, the files, making sure it's right. It primes your architect, your large language model, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever you use, to use the architect builder method from the very first message. That is the critical piece. That's what the project launcher gives you, that no friction to get started off on the right foot. So you don't waste 20 minutes to an hour explaining the method to your AI every single time you want to start a new project. You start every project with it already inside it. So in this video, I'm going to show you two things using the launcher and two new features that I added based on consumer input, people that have been using it. One, we're going to start the project a brand new way, the architect way, like we've done before. And I'm just going to take you from getting an idea out of your head. How do you fill out the input form, which is the most difficult part. And I'm going to show you how we made it easier. And two, how do you take an existing old project? Maybe you got an old repo out there. You've got an app that you've been using and you want to add a feature, or you just simply want to start using the architect builder method as you go forward with this old project that you've already created. So you can use a launcher to help get started bringing that method into the plan as a feature or a fix without losing anything. So both demos use this new optional feature. So if you've already been brainstorming with ChatGPT or Claude, I talked about that in my last video, where you probably are, before you get to this point of using the project launcher, you should be having a conversation with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever to get the idea out of your head, to get some clarity. And then if you have that, then the launcher can give you a prompt that's specific for the architect builder method to help you extract what you've got so far, bring it into the launcher, into that input form, which a lot of people said is the hardest part to fill out, which I agree. And now you get this robust input form because of using the launcher. So the AI hands back that structured summary that will auto-fill your intake form, okay? So 5 minutes of conversation becomes a complete project brief. So let me show you how both plans work, or both methods work. All right, so we're in the project launcher and we're gonna start a brand new project, brand new idea. So we create our new project, clicking on this here. And again, this is the input form that is the hardest part to fill out, right? How do we come up with all this context in here? Of course, you can just start typing in here, but let's just say I've been brainstorming a project in Claude, and here's my personal project folder. And this is a real project. This top conversation up here is a real conversation I'm having with a potential client, wanting to know if I can build him a little mini application for him. So I take our conversations and his files that he gave me, some Excel spreadsheets, and I just start having this conversation, right? Like, how viable is this project? I'm brainstorming. And as I go through this conversation, it's like, yeah, this is a viable project. We can create something out of this, to the point now where I'm like, you know what? I need to create this in the project launcher and start doing it right and creating the code. So, but how do I get all that context into this form? Well, now I got this new option up here that I added. You can expand this window, but again, this is, like it says, you got a ChatGPT or Claude conversation. If you don't, you can just manually type it. But if you do, let's use this tool right here to get the context from the conversation so it can fill out this form nice and robustly. So I'm going to copy this prompt that you get into here in this option, and I'm going to go back to my conversation in Claude in this case, and I'm going to paste it at the end of this conversation. And let's just read this prompt and let's go through and see what it's saying right here. So it's basically saying, look, you're going to help me prepare an intake form for this project launcher. If you've already been talking about the context, which we have, use the context. If it's new, then ask me questions. So that's what that second sentence says. Either way, it's your job to produce me a markdown summary for this project in exactly these headings. And so basically it's just using the format from the form that we can put in. So we can copy and paste or upload a file and it'll populate the form. Okay. And so this talks about the slug and some other inputs. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to run this in our conversation, and already you can see that it's taking the context of that conversation above and putting it in the format. I can copy this and I can paste it in this window here in this option if I want to, which is probably the easiest way. But I also have a way if you want to download a markdown file, or you have a markdown file already somewhere, you can have it created, which I did here, and I downloaded it. And then you can choose a file, upload it into this tool, and then anyway, you run the setup and look, everything's populated nice and filled out. Again, it just took that context that you had outside of the project launcher and allowed it to bring it in here. A huge time saver. And not only that, it's going to make your architect prompt that much more robust. So I'm going to create the project. Now the project is created, and we've got a couple important files here, the folder structure and the architect prompt. But before we do that, we need to set up the architect. So we're going to set up a new project for this project in Claude or ChatGPT, whatever the case, and we need to set up the architect workspace. And the first thing we need to do is make sure that the architect builder method is this file, which is a markdown file, is in the contextual reference. And we also need to copy these custom instructions and make sure the project has the personality for the architect builder method. It's very helpful. So I'm going to start a new project in Claude in this case, and we're going to call it demo for YouTube, and create the project. And now here's what I was talking about. Over here, files for reference, you'd put all kinds of important files, your transcripts, your files. But here we're going to put, this is critical, we're going to put this architect builder method markdown file into the file structure for context for the project. You can read what is in that file right here. Talks all about the method, how it works, why it's important, how they're going to act, what are the rules. So this is critical that you get this in that file structure in your new project in ChatGPT or Claude. So I'm going to add that folder in the file for reference. And of course, you'll add any other files that you have, spreadsheets, transcripts, anything else that you have in there. And then for the custom instructions, this gives it the personality for the responses. It just reinforces what we just put in there. Can't hurt. It's not critical, but it sure helps. And here's what the custom instructions say. Again, kind of reinforcing what's already in that markdown folder. So I'm going to copy these custom instructions and I'm going to paste them in the project. So this is how the project will always respond. Very, very powerful putting this in here, these two things. And it reinforces, it creates the personality for the method. And so you got these two files. And now you are primed by having those in here for your architect conversation, right? So now we can go back for this project in Claude. We can go back to the launcher and go back to our project that we created, right? And we're going to open this back up. That's the one we created. And here is the, again, this is the input that we did earlier. You can edit that if you want to. But now we're going to download that file structure of this project. This is the whole reason why you bought the project launcher. You get the launcher because it gives you the detailed, customized, specific file structure for the architect builder method, and you're going to put that on your hard drive. So in my case, I have it a 120x folder. All my architect builder method projects are in here, a thing called builds. You can put this anywhere you want. And I'm going to drag that newly created folder that the launcher created and put it into my builds. And now I'm primed so that my builder and architect can write to the files. Again, this is all the file structure. Again, this is where all the friction is reduced. That way you don't have to manually do it. It's all set up and primed with the architect builder method. So it will write the source code and all the markdown files. So you'll have that handoff, brains, and historical knowledge. That's what it's all about. That's why we do this, okay? And so then the next thing that we want to do is start the architect conversation. So this is the architect starter prompt. This is what we're going to put into our primed conversation, our primed project in Claude or ChatGPT. And so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in here. Again, it's all primed and it's pasted in here, and off to the races we go. And now it's going to talk to you, ask questions, and you're going to finalize things. And eventually you're going to create that first architect pack, and off to the races you go. All right, so this is the second scenario where we've got an existing project. Maybe you got an old repo or an old app you did a couple of months ago, and you want to start doing the architect builder method. Similar input form, different questions though, but with the same option. If you got a ChatGPT or Claude conversation, we can get this to fill out. We can copy this prompt. It's a little bit different. It's similar to the other way, but it's the same concept that helps you fill this out. So I'm going to go to an actual old project, a simple app I did with a friend who was wanting a resume app we built 3 or 4 months ago, and it's in this conversation. It was a real simple conversation, but it's there. But I also wanted to show you the file structure that wasn't really in the architect builder method it is now. It was in the early stages 4 months ago, me coming up with a process that has a Claude MD file, but not as organized. There's the source code, but it's not as organized as the current structure, what we do now, not as powerful. So we want to add some features. And so here's a conversation that was from way back in February. And then I had a conversation earlier today, and there's like some new features. And so that's what this is right here, the new features that I wanted to add. But I want to do it in the architect builder method. So I paste that prompt, and basically let's go over this a little bit. It's a little bit different than the other one. So it's basically saying you're helping me prepare the intake for the project launcher. This is an existing project on app repo, prototypes, workflows. I want to bring in the architect builder method into it. So the project most likely is not using the method yet. The goal is to plan the features or fixes, and I want to set up the method going forward. So this is what this prompt doing. If you've already been talking, use the context above, which is what we have. If it's new, ask me questions. Either way, produce me a markdown summary in this format. And again, it's for the format for a new feature. Different input form than a new project, but very similar in the same concept right there. So if that makes sense. So this, what the prompt looks like, we're going to execute it, and it's going to put it in the format that we want to. And kind of similar situation, you can see this doing a really nice job taking all the conversation that we had and putting it into this input form. I can copy it and paste it, or I can get a downloadable markdown file like I did before. It's probably easier to copy and paste it, but I just wanted to show you that it is possible that you can upload a file. There's the markdown file. I'm going to download it to my downloads folder. Then I'm going to go back to the launcher. Again, you could paste that here if you wanted, but I'm going to choose a file just to show you that you can do it. And then input the form. And look at that. All nice and robust. Everything's filled out. Gives you that great context. It's going to start your architect conversation off to a good start. You can generate the project now. So the project gets created, the project launcher project. And there it is, Carol's Resume Engine project. And then same thing, we got the download folder structure in the architect prompt. But before, I want to show you, you got to set up your project. I could probably do it in the existing project, but we're going to want to make sure that the architect builder method gets set up in our Claude or ChatGPT project or Cohort project or however you got it set up. And so I could probably, again, use the existing one, but I'm going to create a new one just for you demo. So I'm going to call it Carol's Resume Feature. Here's the architect builder method. Same thing, add it to your files like I did in the first one. Same thing with the custom instructions. Again, you can get this in architect setup. I'm going to put that in the custom instructions of that project. Now it's got the personality. We're primed for an architect conversation. That was the whole reason why we did that. And this is where we're going to have the conversation with the architect. So I'm going to go back to the project now that we just created for Carol's Resume Engine. I'm going to open it back up. Again, our input form's up there. Here's the generated folder. This is the most important piece. We're going to download that file structure. This is for the architect builder method, and it's a little different than doing a new project. Why? Because you already have source code, okay? So notice in here in the file structure, it's missing the source folder because it should exist already in your existing repo. So we don't want to have two source folders in there. So this is the project folder that I had, the messy one, right? And notice you already got the source code down here, so I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to duplicate it, so that's why I don't have it here. And so you're just going to take your folder, the architect builder folder format or structure, the scaffolding, and you're going to put it right at the root of your old project. Okay, so now all the architect builder methodology exists in its own folder. The planning documents, the architect packs, the sprints will all get created in here, but the source files will be written in its normal location. And the prompting and all the stuff and the instructions tell it to do that. So you'll be golden, okay? So it works. And so I'm going to go back to the project launcher and then get the architect starter prompt. Grab that. You're going to go back to, again, you can read this here. It's all customized for this project. And this is why it's so important. And it talks about the existing source code, is in another folder. We're going to make sure we tell the builder all that. It's got all these important instructions for the nuances of doing or dealing with an existing project, and that the architect builder method is taking over midstream, if you will, for the new features and products. So this is a unique prompt and really critical that you start your primed architect project with this prompt. Remember, it's primed right here. So we're going to paste it in here and off we go. What I'm going to show you as it's generating here, I left some files out on purpose, and it's asking for them because, hey, I don't have enough context. I can't create your first architect pack. I'm missing some important information that was in the input folder. There's some files right there. So what I'm going to do right here, I sped it up. I'm just going to show you that you have a safety valve in this architect conversation. It gets you to a good spot. It's not going to create an architect pack until it has the information. So here's me saying, hey, I gave you all the information that you want, and then off to we go, and we're starting our architect builder conversation. And now you're in the exact same spot like you were in a brand new project. So there's both paths, same method, new project, full architect setup from a fresh idea. And then most importantly, the existing project. You can bring what you've already built into the method without losing any of it. Both demos took less time than I usually spend just explaining the method to an LLM. So the launcher does all that part for you, removing that friction. So by the time you open the architect prompt in Claude or ChatGPT, your model is already inside the architect builder mindset. That's what you want. It knows the role, it knows the format, and it's ready to interview you, have that iterative conversation instead of guessing. So from here, you answer the architect's question from that initial conversation. That's what I showed you in this video. And then it will generate that first architect pack, what I call that first pack. Think about it all, the requirements, the blueprints, the acceptance criteria, the builder handoff prompt. They're like giving drawings to your general contractor if you were building a house, right? And so your architect gives these detailed plans, and they all get passed as files in a detailed and organized and disciplined project folder file system. That's what you want. Then that way, the builder, you can start a new conversation in that builder in Codex or Claude Code, and it'll read that file. You'll always have the context. You'll always have the historical knowledge that keeps you on track, and you won't get the hallucinations. You won't get the weird code. You'll get structured, disciplined code. It's not coming from the chat. It's coming from this disciplined folder structure, and that's the doctrine. The handoff is a folder. It's not a conversation, okay? If you want to try this, if you want to start learning how to code the right way, not vibe coding, get the project launcher at 126.ai/launcher. It's a one-time price, no subscription. It runs on your machine. It's all protected. Drop a comment if you're using it. I want to hear what you're building. More videos are coming on the method itself. If you want to work with me one-on-one, you can do that too in my cohort. I have a couple seats left. I can work with you one-on-one to get you started. In less than 4 weeks, you'll be on your way with whatever idea you have in your head. This is how the architect chat usually works, how the builder handoff plays out in the real world, and the patterns that hold up across real projects. This is an amazing time to be alive, guys. Take advantage of it. The launcher is at 120x.ai/launcher. I'll see you in the next video.